Here's an example of the 3-4-5 method. 3 feet of main beam one way, 4 feet of main beam the other way, 5 feet between them, as you see here, leaves a perfect 90-degree angle. I've installed wall molding on the one wooden wall I have. I used main beams instead of wall molding. Had I had it to do over again, I would use wall molding and screw it to the wall. This is just a lot of trouble. I would rather do it with screws. I think it would be easier. If you don't have a hammer drill, drilling concrete block can be slow and tedious. This is the way I did all of my main beams. You may want to do it this way, or you may want to do it your way. I hung a main beam against the wall at the ceiling height line with just 2 wires. I did not wrap the wire, I just hung it with a wire at each end. Then, using a level, I made sure it was level. Then I wrapped the wire around the main beam first, and then through the eyelet in the lag screw, and with my flat electrician's pliers, I pulled it tightly and flattened it and held it with the pliers, and then wrapped the wire around itself. Then I did the other end of the main beam, making sure it's level, and wrapped the wire around that and secured that end. Then I installed each individual wire to the main beam first, and then through the eyelet in the lag screw, and repeated the process, and with a little bit of weight on that main beam, pulling down on it to make sure I had the wire stretched good and tight. All your wires need to be equal in tension, and you'll get a feel for doing this, but this is the way it worked best for me, and this is the way I did it through the whole process. You may like the manufacturer's way of doing things by having a line across and bending your wires. Read their instructions, and you may like it that way, but I just preferred to wrap the wire at the lag screw last. It just worked out better for me. I was able to get the tension on all these wires more even that way. You need to constantly check for level throughout this whole installation. Flatten the loop through the lag screw with your pliers and make at least 3 turns of wire. The wire comes over the block here with this lag screw. Small pieces of main beam used to clear pipes will have to be screwed to the wall and used with a spacer. Measure where you need to clear wires that might be coming through the wall. Notch the main beam and just bend the tab back to clear the wire. Use a square and scratch with a sheetrock screw or with a pen to mark where you want to cut. Cut through both sides of your main beams and then cut down the center. Cut this way on your cross tees as well. This main beam photo shows the holes for the wire and also shows a slot for the cross tee. This angle tool comes in handy to cut 45-degree angle. This is what I call a false miter joint. The 2 pieces overlap and make it look like you've mitered both pieces. Or you can just miter both pieces at 45. And here I'm using a little square to make sure that I get the molding cut squarely. Rather than making marks on my newly painted columns, I just use tape to mark the height of the molding. And you need to check the level of this molding as you cut it, as you install it. A little tricky, but it worked out good. You'll get the hang of it. Hang in there. Molding goes around all the boxes I made with these pan head screws. One piece of molding covers the wooden edge, and the other piece acts as a support for your ceiling panels. So you see here I'm using 2 pieces of molding for each box. The outside molding is drilled before I put it up. Then both pieces are held in place by clamps, and I drill through both of them and install the screws. And there's the finished mitered corner. Looks pretty good, huh? At least for someone who's never done it before. And here's the box for the garage door. It's got its molding too. Here's a false miter on a corner of a main beam. I had too many obstructions in my basement to use a chalk line against the floor joists to mark for the lag screws. If you trust your line of sight, just do it by sight, sight up the line, but you can also use a level as shown here to mark where you want the lag screws. The manufacturer's website has a tool to figure out your main beam locations and your border tiles and all your materials. Be sure and use that. I hope this makes sense to you. As I installed this grid, I constantly dropped in tiles to make sure things were square. You can use these paper binder clips to hold your lines. They work good. You can also use wood shims as shown here to hold your line in some applications. When you install your first main beam, the slot for the cross tee will have to be the exact distance of your border tile, in my case 1 foot 10 inches. It is so easy to forget doing this, and of course you need to do it for every one. If your wall is straight and square, then all will be cut the same, all your main beams will. These snap together with a loud click. You'll need to read on the box how to unhook one of those if you make a mistake. You can unlatch them. Just keep going with your grid and check for square as you go. The start of this center main beam goes straight into a post, so it was a very short piece. It's very important to constantly check your level and your ceiling height. Most pipes are too large just to notch, and you'll have to cut that main beam. Make sure your hands are clean, the square is clean, you have a good sharp blade in your knife, cut on the face. Now if you have any doubts about doing this, make a cardboard template of what you need to cut so you don't waste ceiling tile. Cut the larger tiles first, so if you make a mistake you can use the larger tiles later on for small fill-in pieces. And also something that's very important is that these tiles are directional, so make sure you have them in the right orientation before you drop them in. Now I'm wiring and installing the lights, and I'm also putting 4 additional wires to hold the weight of this light. These lights just drop in just like your ceiling tiles do. I'm cutting this tile out for a small light that will come on when my garage door opener works. And I've installed a fluorescent bulb in it, one of those CFLs. I wanted to stay with a square light to match the square pattern of my tiles. This is also wire hung with 4 additional wires. Measuring and cutting these ceiling tiles can be a very tricky business if you've never done it before. So I would advise getting plenty of cardboard and making templates for each one so you don't waste a lot of tile. Well, it's progressing right along now, and as I always say in my videos, if I can do it, you can do it. Just do research. It takes time and patience, and I made mistakes, and you'll probably make mistakes, but don't get discouraged. This turned out real well, and that door is so much quieter now that it goes up behind that ceiling. I have several holes in my concrete floor that need to be filled before I paint. For small holes, this ready-mix concrete patch works really good. Just be sure to apply as directions in thin layers and let it dry. Well, good luck with your project. Mine turned out really nice. Made a big difference in my house, and I hope it made a big difference in the value of this house too. At 2012 prices, all the materials ran about $1,800. This is so beautiful with the song Summer Place, but I'm sorry, YouTube won't let me use it. Good luck to you. Thanks.